Welcome back, everybody. This is the Triple B podcast here. We're with another lifter, one of our Louisiana lifters. Welcome, Preston Savoy Jr. Is that how you say it?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
All right. Awesome, Preston. Welcome. He's a raw and single ply, 93 kg. Right at the top end of 93, if I may add. Boast a 886 kilo equipped total and a 756 kilo total raw. And welcome, Preston, to the Triple B podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, man. How's your training been lately? I know you just competed about a week ago. How'd that go for you?
Well, whenever I first finished the equip cycle, about a week later, I was feeling some of the effects. So my workout wasn't really. I decided to lighten the load a little bit for that first week, getting back into it. And then now I think the second week it's starting to get a little bit better. Things are starting to feel a little bit easier, but I still want to kind of tone it down a little bit before we really get started into a little bit more hardworking part of our program.
Yeah, how'd you do at the meet?
Oh, sorry, Seth. Go ahead.
How long was the cycle?
Yeah.
Okay, so the equip cycle is mainly about the entire fall semester. So we started getting gear around late August, and then we was working towards finishing up this meet right here. So after this, we're going to get a bit of I think maybe a month break of gear, and then probably pick it back up in the early spring.
Are you planning on doing collegiate nats next year?
For 2021, definitely.
Yeah, I saw a couple of those on your open powerlifting. And I noticed that you kind of go back and forth between raw and equipped, and you're extremely strong in both. What's the reason behind that?
Well, normally whenever I lift equipped and I get a total, I try and make it my duty to beat it whenever I'm out of gear, so I can kind of keep that competition rolling. But mainly for some of it is just figuring out the equipment, but then it kind of changes a bit. So when I first got into equipment, I was able to manage getting a squat suit and a bench shirt. I wasn't really comfortable with using it at first. So after we ran our entire cycle, it got to where I can use it comfortably, not the best, but I can use it. And then whenever I got it and started doing a raw program over the summer, I kind of built my raw strength up. And I was like, hey, let me try and beat my gear total. So I was able to get it. I'm like, okay, good. And then the next time it was like, okay, so we got you a new suit and a new bench shirt. So I'm like, okay, now I gotta go figure this out again. But it's been paying dividends.
Yeah, and I noticed that between, I think it was like a year and a half difference that you added 200 kilos to your equipped total. What do you attribute that to? Just time spent in the gear?
Yeah, that's about it. I really had trouble in the beginning learning how to use gear, and then constant practice with this would help me get better at it, and also a changing of the suits as well to better fit me.
Yeah. So I noticed you attempted a 600-pound bench at your last meet, right?
Yeah.
How often, when you're in an equipped training cycle going up to a meet, how often do you get in your gear? Because I know, we talked to Taylor a couple weeks ago, and she said, when she was going in, she would only get in her, squat suit one week and deadlift suit the next week, and bench every other week. So how does that work for you?
So for bench, we do bench, and we was doing bench and gear pretty much the same thing every other week, but we kind of have a ram or a slingshot. We will use that in the week in the middle, so we have a bit of a break on that. And then same thing with squat suits. We would use that every other week as well.
Okay. Do you
guys have any what would y'all do in between the squat suit sessions? Would y'all just do regular squats with no suit?
Yeah, we would do mainly regular squats and some pause squats, trying to work on getting out of the bottom of the hole, since that's some of the issues that we may have whenever we're in the gear. So we want to try to clean that up, make sure we're hitting depth.
So do you notice a difference in the fatigue and during a raw cycle versus an equipped cycle?
Actually, yeah, there's a bit of it. You can since we're doing pretty much a lot of weight raw. I mean, a lot of weight equipped. It takes a total because in the next couple of days you feel it. Whereas the raw, you can like kind of like get away with like working out back to back days, and then kind of like being able to get away with another workout maybe a couple of days later. But in gear, it's like no. If you when we lift gear, we make sure to have at least like 2 days of a break before we get back into working out again, because it's like a little bit it would be too much to try and do 1 day of rest. I had tried it before one of the weeks during this cycle, and I was like, nah, this workout is killing me. I can't do this after. I need another break.
Yeah, because the way you're lifting equipped is, I mean, it's literally like 100% or more of what you could do raw. So do you do like other workout days in between those days when you're in equipment?
So the days that we're in equipment is about we pretty much use sometimes one of them like our squat suit, and then we use like our deadlift suit like right afterwards. So we won't use that for the next couple of 2 weeks, a week afterwards, and then normally on the 2 days later we would probably go to like a bench, but like a more of a kind of not as heavy paced, but more of a like light to moderate type of a workout for that. That way we can still get a little bit more recovery because it kind of we're still feeling a toll from squats, and we're trying to focus on using some leg drive for bench, so it can kind of create like a little bit of a clash there.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So I noticed that you mentioned recovery, and we did an episode on the best performance tips to increase your performance. What are the big things that are most important to you in your recovery?
Basically, trying to warm up. I want to make sure that I have a good warm, make sure that I'm able to move around as comfortably as I can, especially working on the hips. Cause I feel like when the days that like I have like stiff hips, I'm not able to squat as much or get down as low as I need to. And having stiff hips and being in gear is kind of like too much, because in gear, you have to force yourself down a little bit to get the right spot. And if you aren't really flexible at that point to do it, it just makes the process a whole lot more difficult. And then later on afterwards, you're still going to be feeling that whenever you get out of the suit as well. So I make sure warm up the hips, try and get some focus on more core stability also before I get ready to train. And then afterwards, just really get in the habit of having some stretching, at least a minute stretch on like some of the major body parts that I worked out. So for hips, same thing. Hips is a must. Make sure that my quads are stretched out well. And that's also very important on a bench, making sure my quads are stretched, because I try to use as much leg drive as possible for bench. And I can kind of sometimes I can feel a little bit of a pull in my quad. So I have to make sure that I stretch that out for a minute. So that's all right every time I go to bench. And then same thing with deadlifts, make sure I get a good lower back stretch and hamstrings to make sure I'm all set on those. So it'll be hips, quads, hamstrings, and lower back, and then ab for stability. So that's my main ways to recover.
Can you do this?
Yeah, I think people
after
stretching directly after what?
you just do this like directly after every training session.
Yeah, trying to warm before and then stretching afterward. Trying at least before I leave the building, get that stretching.
Yeah, I think people underestimate the warming up part a lot, because a lot of people just want to jump in and start hitting weights. But when you notice that you start getting up in these higher weights and you don't stretch, you'll start feeling things that are wrong, feeling a little hindrance there or pinch there, whatever it is. But I think for me, I found what works for me, stretching before I work out, and I stick to that. I don't really vary from that unless I'm not feeling right for my workout. So really, I think it's just about finding what makes you feel warm for the workout and just stick with that.
And also just to make sure to take care of those imbalances. I mean, they had one cycle over the fall where I felt like I was having like some imbalance. I may have been squatting like I had like 1 foot out a little bit in front of it, So I had to go and try and make sure really harp on those workouts, doing some make sure I really focus on stretching before and making sure everything's even before I get under the bar and start doing it. And I feel like since I got in the habit of doing that, I was able to increase my squat a little bit more from that.
Yeah, powerlifting is really just about finding the inefficiencies and the things that are not equivalent or the same on either side and fixing those. And it's just a constant battle of trying to fix the little things to keep adding, weight to the total.
Yeah, yeah, that was a big problem on my bench that I attempted was the imbalances because I had it on one side and now on the other.
Oh, okay.
So since you figured out that like those were some of your imbalances, like you just mentioned on the bench, so what are some things you're going to do to fix that? What are some exercises that you're going to incorporate to fix those imbalances?
So really, from this part, whenever we do have triceps on the program, really focus on that medial tricep. It's one of the lesser known tricep head in there because like you have like the short head and the long head, those where take up the bulk of it. But that little medial head that helps out right at that lockout point.
Mm-hmm.
So I was looking at my lift and trying to see where I might have gone wrong because sometimes I go back and take a look at my list and I'll be like, okay, if I missed this, what was the reason why I missed this? So I looked at my right arm, and my right arm came up fine. It was coming up, and then there was a sticking point to where I was looking at my left arm, and it was just staying bent, and I'm like, why isn't this thing coming up? So I think in one of these prior workouts, like last week, we had triceps. So I was like, let me go and try and do like some isolated underhanded tricep pull downs. So I went to the cable and I was doing it. I tried it with my left arm. I did like 3 sets of 12, and it was pretty all right. But then if I did my right arm, it was easier. So I'm like, okay. So whenever I went up a little bit in weight, and then I started to struggle with my left arm, I'm like, okay, let's see if this is a problem with my right arm. Then I might be able to solve it. So I did it with my right arm, and then I noticed that it was really easy, and I didn't have no problems. So I'm like, okay, this is where the imbalance is. So just make sure that whenever I have the opportunity to get more tricep work in, be able to take it and really focus on that part, so I can kind of get them more even.
I like how you figured that out by yourself. I think that's pretty awesome. You kind of just use your left arm as like, okay, if I can do this with my left arm, let me see how this feels with my right. If it feels easy, then that means I just have something wrong with that. I think that's a key takeaway for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. And anything like a weaker body part I might have, I want to get that one done first. That way, if I don't get the amount of reps I want to, I can just make sure just to match it for my right one.
Interesting. So, and you mentioned too, like raw training, you can kind of go back to back, and it might not be as big of a toll on you like for those training days. And on the equip days, you can only really do like that one day. Then you have to have that 48 to 72 hours to recover. So, how does your raw training differ from your equip training? Do you squat more? Do you bench more in the week, or is it just that same once a week?
No, I think like our squat and bench is more than normal, so we're able to get away with more stuff. Also, we do like same thing like we do board presses, like going from the board, and then still more like slingshot work. So we're able to get more of that in. And then in multiple weeks, so we can do 1 week we do boards, then the next week do slingshots. Sometimes we even do them in the same day. We can get away with that as opposed to like in a gear cycle. We would bench in a shirt once, and then that'll be it for the next other week. We have to split it up and then do some type of bench, like moderate to light bench, and then the next week after, then we can go in the shirt again. As opposed to raw, we can go like one day we can do like the slingshot, and then a day later we can go ahead and do the board press. So being able to do more of the main lifts in a less amount of days or the amount of weeks it takes is a big difference.
So you mentioned the slingshot. Do you use that in your raw training cycle as well, or is that just for the equip?
No, we use the slingshot in the raw training as well. Normally, I try and keep for raw training the little slingshot, by Mark Bell. There's also another one. I think it's like a Magnum Ram made by like Titan. That's more to simulate a bench shirt. So normally for gear programs, I try and work more towards that one, because that one's going to give me the more help to get in a shirt whenever
And
we can't use a shirt.
Yeah, since you've been doing that, have you seen a greater carryover from your raw cycle over when you get back in the bench shirt?
Yeah, that's been it's been from this past training cycle going back from raw to geared. At first, I had to kind of like figure out where I was at because everything was just feeling really light because I used the slingshot a bit, and then I had to transfer over to the ram. The ram was like, okay, this feels a little bit tight, but everything's moving easy right now, so let me just focus on form for this because I knew the weight was there. I just had to change my form a bit because my raw grip and my gear grip they're the same. So I have to make sure that I make that little minor adjustment before I really start putting on weight. So once I had that fixed, and then a couple of weeks later, I start getting more comfortable with the ram. I started moving past weight I already did in the meet, and I'm like, okay, I might be on something here. So that got me real excited to put on back the shirt again.
So have you learned anything from your either your raw training cycle or your equipped training that you can carry over to the other one and apply it?
Yeah, especially this from this past meet, what I can take away is making sure that I really focus on the lockout portion of all my lifts. I really think from this past meet and gear, it wasn't bad, but it pointed out some of the things that I can work on, regardless of whether it's geared or equipped. So locking out portion on the bench, whether I'm in a shirt or not, I'm still going to have to finish that lockout. And then same thing for deadlift too, finishing out that lockout. And then squat was about squat. I really don't have any problems with it. Just the finishing out the lockout portions on a bench and deadlift. I can go and do some more practice on that for raw, and that's gonna help me whenever I get back in gear. Because essentially, whether you're in gear or raw, whenever you have to lock out, that's pretty much it's pretty much the same thing. There's not really much assistance at the top when everything's already been lifted. And now that's the part I find I struggle with the most.
Exactly.
So you're talking about like on the bench, the lockout, the squat, the final lockout with the hip extension, and the deadlift with the hip extension.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I haven't heard too many people talk about they have trouble at all the lockouts.
Yeah, it's like that. I just got to get through a certain point, and then I'll be like, okay, I can get this. But it's a problem, but it's a good problem to have. I don't have to worry about being at the bottom of every lift and then struggling at that point because I'll feel like that'll be more difficult.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about like the process that you use to figure out, okay, your triceps is weak. So what about your lockout? What are some of the things you're going to do to fix that for your squat and your bench? I mean, squat and deadlift.
Really just focusing on extensions. Whenever I'm on bench, just try and like make sure I get a little bit more couple of holds before just racking it. Because I want to catch myself like benching and then immediately put it in a rack. On like bench it, then after I hold it out there, hold it for about good 1 or 2 seconds. That way I can get my arms used to having it locked out and then putting it back on the rack. And then same thing for deadlift, just being able to once I'm at the top of my deadlift, really holding it and focus on holding it for that 1-2 seconds, getting that good contraction, and then putting it back down. Because a lot of times people can get carried away with just doing the rep and then hurry up and racking it, or putting the deadlift up and they might not even be locked all the way and they're putting it back down. You get in a bad habit of doing that. Then at when meet time, whenever you have to try and lock out, you'd be like, oh, I don't normally do this. Normally just throw it back in the rack. So now I got to hold it. And then you get a little bit of a struggle.
I think that's huge for anybody that enjoys powerlifting and wants to compete at some point is, you're going to have to do the lifts to a certain standard in competition. So you might as well do exactly what you're going to have to do in training that you do in a meet, So when that's getting close to a meet, holding that lockout on bench or holding that lockout on deadlift or, making sure your knees aren't bent a little bit before you squat. It's just the little things that make a difference in a meet if you can't do them. because you hadn't been worked on them in training.
Yes.
Yeah.
I saw.
I
I think
feel,
this
I
is.
feel like
Go ahead.
Okay. I feel like it's just like minor tweaks that people just need to find out what they need to do in order to get better. That'll go a long way instead of just like what some people might get in the habit of, like just completely changing what they're doing. Like they may have something wrong with their stance or something wrong with the lockout. They might just entirely change their stance. And then I'm like, well, yeah, it really doesn't make any sense. You can just focus on that lockout and you be good. Or for bench, like if they normally bench for like let's say they're doing raw and they're doing pinky on the ring and they have like their feet wide a little bit and they can't lock it out, they might try to bring their feet a little bit more in and bring it more back, like by a drastic amount, and then try and see if that'll help their press. When they just could be like, well, maybe just focus on your lockout a little more instead of just benching it and putting it back in the rack.
So changing too much at one time, you think that can be an issue sometimes?
Yeah, because you have to, you want to try and have one thing to focus on at a time. That way you can keep it in the back of your mind, like, okay, I know I got to make sure I hold this lockout, so let me go ahead and hold this lockout. If you're thinking of, I got to keep my feet, make sure I keep my feet all the way back, and then at this width, and then hold the lockout, you're going to miss one of them.
Yeah. So I think this would be a good conversation piece for us to talk about real quick. So on Elite FTS, there was a video about a guy talking. I can't remember the guy's name exactly, but he was talking about if you should pause bench press in training to prepare for a meet, and he said you don't really need to. Now he was of course talking about you know the name.
Was it Sweet Burns?
I think
it
that was
was
him.
Sweet
Yes.
Burns.
But he was talking about dynamic effort method training, but a lot of people took that as you don't need to pause your bench in training. So Preston, what do you think? Do you think you should pause your bench in training if you're going to have to do it in the meet?
If I hadn't paused my bench in training, I would have bombed out of that meet. If I'm being 100% honest, because that 584, it was a bit of a struggle, and it also was mainly part of that lockout. But another reason is for the while we was training up to the meet in gear, we always make sure that we don't bomb out in the meet. So we make sure we have everything in training to where, okay, we're going to do things this way. For your benches, we're going to make sure that you can hold it for 3 seconds on your chest and then press it back up. So that way we know whenever you can come in bench feeling horrible, but you'll be able to get your opener. So I was like, okay, I was able to hold my bench for 3 seconds. I did 584 for holding it 3 seconds a couple of times in practice. So I know I was familiar with it. And then when the meet day came, I was like, I was getting a bit worried because I did 545 in the warm-up room, and then I had to go again right afterwards. I only had like 2 minutes of rest, so I had to hurry up and get under there again. And then whenever it came down, I was like, well, I'm glad I had the quick press because I don't know if I was going to be able to hold it longer. So whenever they said press, I was able to, I managed to get it up, but the person said a rack before it. So I was able to go in and retry it again and then get it. But I really think it was because of holding it in practice for that long amount of time. I was able to get it up there because whenever they said press, I'm like, wow, I just touched my chest and now I got to press it back up. So I was like, yeah, that was happening.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like if you practice pause bench in training and then worst case scenario, you get to the meet and they end up making you hold it on your chest just as long as you practice for it. So then you're prepared for it. You know, you practice in training, pause on the chest, and you get to the meet, and it's a quick command like you had. You had worked specifically pausing it so much that it threw you off a little bit, but it's better than not being prepared for the length of pause they have.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember back when there was like this raw meet that we had, and there was a referee that was holding like people on bench for like 3 seconds minimum, and everybody was getting red lighted because they wasn't getting a lift up because it was getting held for so long. But it wasn't really a problem for me. Normally, I try and focus on making sure my benches are paused. And also in our program, we have it specifically written to where we have to make sure our last rep is paused. That way we won't get in the habit of just touching and going all the time.
So who does y'all's programming? Who's y'all's coach?
I was about to ask that.
Yeah, we have our our coach, Andrew Reese. He does he does our program for the team. I think he was he's a former he went to Bench Worlds, so he's really experienced with a bench type of stuff. So I feel like that's why what our team really excels at.
Yeah, I noticed you on your open powerlifting, you had 2 bench nationals on there, and I was wondering, would you say bench is your specialty?
Yes, definitely.
I mean, look at those
I
triceps.
try not to be I try not to be as bad from other lifts, but I really think having excelling at one a lot and one lift is really helpful in terms of like being competitive in powerlifting.
So, what are your thoughts on the Julius Maddox 800-pound bench?
I'm kind of upset that they kind of misloaded his weight. That kind of got me hurt a little bit because the way he had it, I was like, oh man, he could get this. But then they unracked it and he had to hold the misloaded weight in his hands. I'm like, dang, that took a lot out of him.
Yeah, I don't see how you can let that happen. If you're the organizer, the people loading, whoever checks people loading, I mean, this
Mm,
man is going for a world record bench press. He's about to have, a shit ton of weight over his face. How do you mess up loading? I mean, 2 people have got to go back and check to make sure that's right.
yeah, normally for meat drawers, make sure if it's like a record going on, and I'm like back spotting or something, I always just look and check to make sure the weight is right. Because if I was under there, I wouldn't want anybody to be careless with what I'm trying to do.
And I mean, with after taking all the warm ups that he needs to get to 800, and then attempting to misload 800, I'm sure he doesn't have a whole lot of juice left to try it again.
Mhm. Yeah, especially with him just holding out misloaded weight because that puts a lot of strain on one shoulder.
Yeah, but that's a crazy amount of weight.
For anybody, no matter if you're squatting or deadlifting or benching.
Yeah, 800 pounds is 800 pounds. I want that at least on one of my lifts.
I
So,
mean, you'll get there pretty soon. You got a pretty heavy squat and bench.
Yeah.
I say maybe a year and a half you'll hit that maybe a 700 bench.
Oh, that would be. I would be ecstatic if I were to get that.
I can't believe we're talking about a 700-pound bench press. And how old are you?
23.
At 23 years old, imagine that. That's hella impressive, man. Even your bench right now is hella impressive. I mean, man.
And that's what I was so surprised about is that your raw bench is so close to your equip bench.
What is your raw bench?
Yeah. Uh, right now, I haven't really been doing bench singles raw. I'd stopped whenever we got into the gear program, but before we did the gear program, we had a little bit of a mock meet, and I was able to get 475. I got 475, and I could have done a little bit more, but the coaches they're just like, yeah, you're good right there. Let's not push it too much because we're about to get into to gear. So I was like, okay, I'll take that right there. I'm happy with that.
That's a good coach.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of that, what is your training philosophy? What do you keep in mind every day when you go into the gym? What do you base your training off of?
Pretty much how we have it is what you did last time for the workout. So if we're doing like for example, like a squat workout, and we do like a certain percentage, so maybe we have like 80% of like 8% of like our raw max, and then we're just gonna go based off of that percentage. Then refer to what you did last week. So last week, if you did like 75%, then try and like bump it up a little bit, bump it up to like another 5%. If not, then just do like another 5 or 10 pounds. And then we have AMRAP added in. So if we're able to AMRAP a set of if we have a 5x5 and we AMRAP our last set and get about like 8 to 10 reps, and we know like, okay, we need to push this up a little more.
Do you like those AMRAPs? You feel like they benefit you over the longevity of a program?
Yeah, I feel like they do benefit me. Is just sometimes I can go a little bit overboard with them with the AMRAPs, trying to beat it every time, and then I feel like it ends up like diminishing my other workouts later on because I still have to recover from it. So the AMRAPs are good, but just not to go too crazy with them.
It's pretty interesting.
Okay.
Just super simple. If you did it last week, just add 5 or 10 pounds. I mean,
And that's all powerlifting is just
Yeah.
constantly improving, whether it's like, the reps you did or the weight on the bar. No matter what it is in the workout, if you improve week to week, you'll eventually get to that point where you achieve your goal and you can, set a new goal and start improving from there.
Yeah.
it's a pretty common
So
theme.
Yeah.
Keep it simple.
Let's talk about your weight a little bit. I noticed that you've always been, when you competed recently, kind of the top end of the 93, right there next to 205. Have you always
Yeah.
been around that weight, or do you do any kind of like weight cut before you go into a meet?
I always do a water cut about like 5 days out. I normally make sure I stay around 5% over my weight class, try not to exceed that. So when I get to about so I'll be around like 215. And then whenever I'm at about like 215 or a little bit over, and then I have like a meet come up next week, be like, okay, let me just make sure I can focus on being at a good weight to where I can start the water cut. So normally training days, the COVID past week was I was like in the 220s because I just got back from just being at home. So from there, I started to get down to around like 217, and I just been staying around there the whole entire time until we got to the meet, and then I dropped a little bit to 215, and then I started the cut, and then it's not bad. So for my cut, I can pretty much get, if I'm at like 215 or a little bit over, I can get down to 205, no problem.
Wow. Have you ever had any water cuts go wrong before a meet?
No.
No.
I really don't have any problems with water cuts. It just starts from the beginning how much my weight is. That's the only problem that if I can just get down to a certain threshold to where I can water cut, I feel like it's pretty easy to do. I just have to follow the plan and then I'll get there.
Do you notice a lack in strength at all going to the meet, or is this just normal for you?
No, it's pretty normal. There might be a little bit of a decrease in strength, and that would probably be on bench, but it's not as much to where like it gives me like a drastic decrease. If I were to be like a 217 and stuff and compete in like a 105, I wouldn't have that big of a bench increase as opposed to being a 205. It may be like a being, if I'm not able to lock it out at 205 and 231s, I'll be able to lock it out, but it would still be a grinder.
Yeah.
So I don't really see a decrease in that. And then as in gear, there really is no difference. It just makes it easy to get down in a shirt.
Yeah, that was gonna be my second question. If any of your gear fit different, because that's about a 10-pound difference. And even when I go from like, I stay at the top end of the 105s. Whenever I go from like, 223, 225 up to like 230, I can notice that my squat suit feels different.
Mm-hmm. So my squat suit and my bench shirt was actually custom bought so it can fit me as best as it can for being a 205. So whenever I train in it at like 217, it really doesn't fit how it's supposed to. So it may be more difficult to train with it because I have to focus on getting down with so much compression, as opposed to when it comes to meet day, I have no compression. It fits perfectly how I want it. So I just go down and come right back up. Or for bench, being able to pull through the tight bubble whenever I got to make it touch my chest.
Okay, I got you.
So, do you have any like nutrition guidelines you follow, or do you just eat?
I mean, the only real thing is I stay away from fast food. I don't eat any fast food. Chicken breast, tilapia, and then just rice, really. And then also a lot of Nature's Valley. They have these little cereal oat things. Them things are good. So sometimes after I train from the gym, I just go ahead and eat one of those when I get home.
Do you like?
Okay.
You said after training you eat one of those Nature Valley bars, but do do any kind of other, like before training, do you eat a pretty big meal, or after training, do you make sure to get a pretty substantial amount of carbs, fats, and everything in there?
It's pretty much after training. After training, I like to do that. I can't really work out on like a full stomach because sometimes it doesn't really go well, especially if it's like a squat day. So I just like stay away from that and just eat afterwards.
Gotcha.
Go ahead and replenish that. Do you keep it simple with the supplements? Protein pre-workout, or do you have other little things thrown in there?
I keep it pretty simple. There's as right now there really isn't a point in me having too much supplements because it's really just training and making sure that you eat the right food. So there's no really point in like a protein. I do have tubs, but I think it was because there's like a deal going on. I'm like that'll last me about a couple of months. I only use it if I like absolutely need to have something, and then creatine, and then that's about it.
Okay, yeah. Keep it simple. That's all you need. Just train hard, eat right, and sleep.
Yeah.
So I'm going to guess. Go ahead, Seth.
You got it.
So I'm going to guess that like it's more of like a linear periodization y'all kind of do. So you mentioned that y'all do like, say you do like 80%, then the next week you go maybe 85%. For a little bit lower, for like, say you do the 80% for like a 5x5 or 5x4, and then the next week you go 85% for 5x4, for 5x3 or 5x4. Is that kind of what it's like? Is that?
It's like that for like the first. It's like that for the first couple of days, and then it like switches to where you just do like a 5x5, and then it goes from there. Like we might have like triples, so it stays there for like a certain period of time, and then it like maybe a couple of more weeks, and then it goes down to a regular 5x5, and then 5x3, and then it leads up to where we have a mock meet. So
Gotcha.
this one it really isn't long because we're supposed to have like a mock meet like next month. So
Okay. So aside from the mock meet, do y'all do like SBD days?
oh yeah. We actually I had one today. It was a squat, bench, and deadlift.
Okay. Well, for you personally, and I guess the team as a whole, do you feel like it helps better prepare people for the meet? Because if you haven't competed in a while, like I noticed that it's been since what, January of this year since you competed last before COVID.
Yeah.
I feel like it helps prepare people better for the meet, because it can be, especially in equipped, it can be kind of hard to go back to doing 3 big squats, 3 benches, and 3 big deadlifts in one day.
Yeah, it definitely helps. Yeah, I really like doing squat, bench, and deadlift. So doing them on one days is good. It may take a little bit of time, but you just have to make sure if you need to just try and be mindful of what weight you're doing, and just know that you have other lifts left. So try not to go too crazy on squat because you have bench and deadlift. So might go from start with like a couple of light sets and gets like moderate, maybe 1 heavy. And then for bench, just trying to keep a steady pace, same thing, light, moderate, and then heavy. And then deadlifts, trying to keep them all like moderate to maybe 1 heavy set. So we don't have too many crazy heavy sets on those days, just more like 1, and then the rest is like moderate or light.
I think that can also help people see what weight range in each lift they can get to, and still have enough energy for whatever follows that.
Yeah,
so it seems like it's a good idea to work on.
Yeah, it helps with our jumps too on meet day, because that's how we try and keep it too. We have 1 light where we can hit no matter what goes wrong, and then like a moderate weight to where, okay, we're comfortable with this, we can do this, it's possible. And then on the last one, heavy, and then we still should have enough strength because of our last 2 attempts to hit the 3rd one.
Okay.
It's interesting. So you're doing like a SBD day, and I've noticed that strongmen do like a strongman day, and it's kind of got the gears clicking going in my head, like saying, okay, if strongmen do like all their events on one, they have like Atlas zones and everything, and log presses and everything. If they do all that on one day, why shouldn't powerlifters do the same thing? Because it's sport specific, so to say. You're getting ready for the meet by doing everything on one day. It's got the gears clicking in my head when you said that.
Yeah, we have that. We have that on one day, and then the other day we may have like we focus on a bench, and then another day we focus on a squat or back.
I see what you mean, Altman, but I think the reason we don't do that is because it takes so much out of you when you do all three lifts in one day. I mean, if you only went like light to moderate on each lift, maybe you could get a couple days out of that. But I think you get more benefit by just doing one compound movement per day. It's like you could do a meet one week, and then the next week go into another meet, and your body's going to be wrecked after that.
Well, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
you
not
have to
saying
have
do
a
like a meet.
I know, but even just like training, I don't think you can handle that for very long.
Well, yeah, of course you're gonna need a deload eventually, but like even strongmen, they pull cars, they do giant Atlas stones, they lift 440 pounds over their head and press it. And they do that all of them in like one day. So I think if you're smart about your recovery, maybe instead of doing like all three lifts, the like super heavy, maybe having like one lift a week where you go like, okay, I'm gonna go heavy on squat, but then moderate to light on bench and deadlift, and kind of switching that out each week.
hmm Yeah, because
I think you'd have to be.
we don't always have to have one of our lifts be heavy. Because so for like today, we did do a squat, bench, and deadlift, but squat wasn't as heavy as the other two. So for that one, it was mainly just a really bench and a deadlift, and then for deadlift, really we it wasn't really heavy. Just like your last set, yeah, it can be heavy, but the other ones is just leading up to that. So we're making big jumps. So really, it was just bench was like moderate to heavy, and then deadlift was just like like one heavy set, and then squat was pretty much everything should be moderate, light to moderate. So we're going that way is it's more doable and being able to recover after that.
Okay. I think that could work for some people
Hmm.
if it was gone about the right way, like you're talking about, Preston, by
hmm
doing light to moderate on some of them.
Yeah, I don't think you'd be able to cover if you was doing heavy on all of them,
Yeah.
because
Yeah, I don't think
then you need
so.
like more days of recovery. So similar to like how since we're doing most of this raw, we're able to kind of recover more as opposed to if we was doing this equipped, we would need a couple of more days, and then the days we get back to it go light, and then next week then try and go back to normal.
Okay.
Those are
So
pretty good
what are
ideas.
yeah. Maybe we should start implementing that with the team, Altman.
Yeah,
Maybe a couple SBD days here and there.
yeah.
So Preston, what are some of your short term and then maybe some of your long term goals too for powerlifting? How
Short
close is that
goals,
2K total?
yeah, yeah, 2K definitely, but another one of my another one of my short term goals is just to hit that 600 on bench and then win nationals. So
I got you. So you're 23 right now. Do you have one or two more or collegiate nationals?
I think I have because of COVID. I think I have like two more. So it'll be
Okay.
2021 and 2022.
All right, that should be plenty of time to win one. And so
hmm
you like to do raw and single ply meets. Do you plan on, since your last one was equipped, do you plan to do like a raw meet before nationals, or are you going to do raw or equipped at nationals?
I think we do have a meet scheduled in like February, a raw meet. So I'll have to see about that one if I can compete. Because normally what we do is we kind of use that meet for some of the new people we have on our team to qualify for the raw for the equipped nationals. So I'm not sure if any of the veterans are going to be lifting, and we're just helping out the rookies with the meet, or if we're competing along with them or all.
Okay. So I notice ULL, it's a scholarship powerlifting school, right?
No, it's not.
No.
Really, we just to get lifters, we just go on this thing called Get On Board Day, where they have like some freshmen come in and look at some booths, and we trying to pitch them what your powerlifting is, and some of them just walk up in a sign and then just get ready to get started. So we really don't have a scholarship program, but we're really good at finding diamonds in the rough.
Yeah.
Seth, maybe we should do some of that.
Man, this COVID, how has COVID affected y'all's recruiting for the team, and I guess how team practices can go?
Well, right now, we can't have any team practices in our building, and since some organizations is like going down to like back to like a modified like phase 2. I don't know how long our facility like Bourgeois Hall, I don't know how that's gonna last. So we're just focusing on trying to make sure that we have a good outside gym. We have this gym called Iron House. It's a really good one that we can kind of use to go to. That's more powerlifting oriented. That we can kind of have if we want to like have like more of a practice and try and like message each other. That way we can all get together and work there.
Oh wow! So it's right now it's pretty much everybody that's been kind of on your own training.
Yeah, pretty much on your own. Grab a buddy if you can, and just try and work with what you have, whatever gym you can find.
Man, we got lucky enough this year at Mississippi State to be able to find a gym in the city and go to that for practices, because the gym on campus, we would have had to make 50-minute time slots and wear masks and gloves, and it just doesn't work for powerlifting. You can't get a 50-minute workout in, a quality one anyway.
Yeah, with masks, because you have to speed through it, and then all that restricted breathing.
That's just not it.
Mm-hmm.
Alban, you got anything else?
I don't think so, guys. It's been pretty good. A lot of good information. A lot of things I can take and use that Preston, you've mentioned, and hopefully a lot of other people can use.
Yeah, one last thing, Preston. This podcast is meant for younger lifters, high school, college powerlifters that want to get into powerlifting or strength training. If you could give one piece of advice to younger lifters getting into it, what would that be?
I would say be coachable, and nothing's going to come immediately. It's going to take time. Just be patient and just stick with it.
I think that's a good piece of advice. Yeah. A lot of people, I mean, even sometimes I get in my own head and I'm like, you know what? I'm right, he's wrong. But sometimes you got to step back and realize that other people know more than you. And, in powerlifting, there's a lot of people that want to give whatever advice they can to help the next generation coming up. And then you just take whatever advice you can, apply that, and see if it works for your training.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, Preston, thank you so much for your time. And thanks for coming on and giving your expertise and information. Where can people find you on Instagram?
You can find me at benchpress_ton, and that's it.
That's it. All right, go check Preston out. As always, you can find us at triple.b.podcast. Alban, what about you?
Big Strength, and we are going to be out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube now.
Yes, sir. Go check us out on YouTube. Check out our latest episodes. We've got plenty of very experienced and strong guests to learn from. Preston is now added to the docket of those lifters. Preston, we hope your training goes well soon, and we'll see you at Collegiate Nats.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you.